Agra and gone. Their mother, the queen, was dead, and the children missed her terribly. They missed the stories she used to tell them, the games she used to play, and the songs she sang at bedtime as she hugged them to sleep. The king saw that his children were sad and needed a mother, so he decided to marry again. The new bride was called Aoife. She was beautiful, but she was not the kind-hearted person the king thought she was. Aoife grew jealous of the 4 children because their father loved them so much. She wanted the king all to herself, so she planned to get rid of the children. She asked a druid to help her, and together they thought up a terrible spell. In the castle grounds there was a large lake that the children loved to play beside. One day Aoife went with the children to the lakeside. As they played in the water, she suddenly pulled out a magic wand and waved it over them. There was a flash of light and the children vanished. In their place were 4 beautiful white swans. One of the swans opened its beak and spoke in Fionnuala's voice. "Oh, what have you done to us?" she asked in a frightened voice. "I've put a spell on you," replied Aoife. "Now everything you have will be mine. You will be swans for 900 years. You will spend the first 300 years on this lake, the next 300 years on the Sea of Moyle, and the final 300 years on the Isle of Glora. Only by the sound of a church bell can the spell be broken." When the children did not come home that evening, the king went back to look for them by the lake. As he came near, 4 swans swam up to him. He was amazed when they began to call out. "Father, Father," they cried, "we are your children. Aoife has placed a terrible magic spell on us." The king ran back to the castle and pleaded with Aoife to change the swans back into children, but she refused. Now Lear saw how selfish she was and banished her from the kingdom. He promised a reward to anyone who could break the spell, but nobody knew how to do it, for the spell was very strong. Lear spent the rest of his life beside the lake, talking to his children until he grew old and died. The swans were heartbroken. They no longer talked or sang, and nobody came to see them. 300 years passed, and it was time for the swans to move to the cold and stormy Sea of Moyle, between Ireland and Scotland. The 4 swans were tossed about by the wild waves and dashed against the sharp rocks. It was a harsh life with little food, and the years passed slowly. When the time came for them to fly to the Isle of Glora, the swans were old and tired. Although it was warmer on the island and there was lots of food, they were still very lonely. Then one day they heard the sound they had waited 900 years for. It was the sound of a church bell. The bell was ringing in the tower of a little church nearby. An old man, let me check how you say the name in the back of the book. An old man called, I guess he's not a prominent love character. Oh, Keevuk. An old man called Keevuk stood outside. He was amazed to hear swans talking and listened to their sad story in astonishment. Then when he went inside his church and brought out some holy water, which he sprinkled on the swans while he prayed over them. As soon as the water touched them, the swans miraculously began to change into an old woman and 3 old men. Lear's children were frightened. Keevuk told them about God and his of Macdowell, a man so gifted it was said that his verses could charm the birds out of the trees. All the nobles and warriors of the kingdom were there, including the Knights of the Red Branch. I'm gonna check the name in the back. I think it's, well, it doesn't look like it's over. I think it's Weylimoth. Correct me if you know better. Okay, even though Weylimoth's wife was expecting a baby, she was supervising the servants, making sure that everyone had everything they wanted. Suddenly, the laughter and merriment were broken by a piercing scream which sent an icy shiver down the spines of all those assembled. A sense of great sadness and misery engulfed the room. Everyone looked at Weylimoth's wife, who was standing stock still, mead pouring from the jug in her hand. Then she screamed a second time, an even more blood-curdling scream than the previous one. But to those watching it seemed to be coming, not from her mouth, but from her unborn baby. The king was as alarmed as everyone else and asked his chief druid, Catbat, what this could possibly mean. My king, replied Catbat, the scream from an unborn child is an evil omen. It spells danger for Ulster and is a warning that sadness will reign throughout the land. The child will be the greatest beauty ever seen in Ireland, and her beauty will tear the kingdom apart and will bring about the deaths of many men. She will be called Deirdre, and will become known as Deirdre of the Sorrows. A dreadful silence fell when the druid finished speaking. He had prophesied a terrible war, the destruction of the kingdom, and the end of everything the nobles and knights knew and loved. Soon afterwards, Weylimoth's baby daughter was born and was named Deirdre. The Red Branch Knights were afraid for their lives, and they advised the king that the baby should be destroyed to save Ulster from a dreadful fate. The king thought for a while. I will send Deirdre to be brought up far away, kept from the eyes of men, and I myself will marry her when she is old enough. This will prevent men fighting over her, and the kingdom will be safe. The knights were not happy with this, but they knew that the king had made up his mind. Deirdre was taken away to a dense forest and was given into the care of a wise old woman called Lanark. Let's have a look if that's right. Lanark. Laoakim. As predicted, Deirdre grew more and more beautiful with each passing year, with long golden hair and deep blue eyes. She had no one of her own age to talk to, and was very lonely. She began to have the same dream every night, and told Lanark, I dream of a tall dark warrior with hair as black as a raven's wings and skin as white as snow. He is brave and fearless in battle. Lanark was very worried, because she knew who the man was. He is Nisha, one of the 3 sons of Ushniak. All knights of the Red Branch. You must never mention your dream again, for you are promised to King Connor, and will soon marry him. Deirdre begged Lanark to send for Nisha. That is Deirdre dreaming, and that is Nisha. She dreams of. Lanark refused, but felt sad that a beautiful young girl like Deirdre would have to marry the old king. And when Deirdre began to pine, she gave in and arranged a meeting between the 2 young people. As soon as they met, Deirdre and Nisha fell in love. 3 sons of Ushnok. Deirdre screamed and fell to the ground beside Naois's body. So great was her sorrow that her heart broke at that moment, and she died beside him. Balamar was so angry with the king that he left Ulster forever and went to live in Connaught at the court of Queen Maeve. Many of Connor's warriors went with him and joined the Queen's army. Later, they would fight many bloody battles against the Knights of the Red Branch. In this way, the prophecy that Deirdre would bring sorrow and trouble to Ulster was fulfilled. The Brown Bull of Cooley. Queen Maeve ruled Connaught with her husband. I'll check the pronunciation of that. Husband Alil. She was a tough ruler, and both she and Alil were very competitive. One night they began to boast to each other about all their riches and possessions. Maeve had many beautiful jewels, but so had Alil. Alil had fine clothes, but so had Maeve. On and on they went, comparing their chariots, houses, lands, flocks of sheep, and great herds of cattle. Anything mentioned by one of them was soon matched by the other. Then Alil remembered his white bull. Let me check the name of how you say the name of the white bull. The white bull is called Finnvanok. Then Alil remembered his white bull, Finnvanok. Maeve had nothing to say to this because none of the bulls in her herds were quite as fine as Finnvanok. The next day, Maeve sent for her druid. "Tell me," she demanded, "where in Ireland will I find a bull as fine as Alil's white bull, Finnvanok?" "The bull you are looking for is in Ulster," replied the druid. "It is a great brown bull that belongs to Dara MacFiacra, who lives in Cooley." Maeve sent messages to Cooley at once, asking for a loan of the grey bull for 1 year. In return, she promised Dara MacFiacra a gift of 50 fine heifers, I don't know. Dara was delighted with the offer and ordered a feast to be prepared for Maeve's messengers before they set off on their journey back to Connaught. During the feast, however, one of the messengers was heard boasting that if Dara had not given the bull willingly, they would have taken it by force. When this was reported back to Dara, he was absolutely furious. "Go back to Connaught and tell your queen that she will not have my bull," he shouted as servant to see what was happening. The servant took Setanta by the arm and brought him before the king. "Who are you?" asked the king. "I know all the Macro boys, but I don't recognize you." "I am Setanta, son of your brother, the king of Dundalk. I have come here to join the Macro because I want to be a Red Branch Knight as soon as I am old enough." The king was impressed with Setanta and agreed that he could join the Macro. Setanta settled in very quickly and enjoyed every minute of his training and education. The boys who had attacked him soon became his firm friends, and everyone always wanted him to be on their team. One day, Cullen, the king's master blacksmith, who made all the spears and swords for Connor's men, invited the king and his knights to a feast. As the king's nephew, Setanta, was also invited. However, when it was time to set out for the feast, Setanta was playing a game of hurling with his schoolmates and he didn't want to leave. He told the king that he would come later when the game had finished. When the royal party arrived at Cullen's home, the king forgot to tell his host that Setanta would be coming later. Time passed, the feast got underway and the king still didn't remember about Setanta. Cullen unchained his wolfhound, which guarded his home at night, and released it. The game of hurling was an exciting one, and it went on for a long time. Setanta set out for the blacksmith's house as soon as it was over, but by the time he reached it, night had fallen. As he approached the door, he heard a ferocious and savage growling, and then a large beast attacked him, jumping at him with its sharp teeth bared. Setanta was carrying no weapons, but he hurled his sliator down the dog's throat with all the strength he could find, and then he took the animal by its hind legs and dashed it against a rock, killing it instantly. Inside the house, the party had heard the commotion above the noise of their merrymaking. "My nephew," cried the king. "I had forgotten that he was to arrive later." He pushed outside with his knights, expecting to find Setanta torn to pieces. Imagine everyone's surprise when they discovered Setanta, alive and well, standing over the body of the dead dog. Although Cullen was very relieved that the king's nephew was safe, he was also very sad that his faithful wolfhound, who had guarded his house every night for years, had been killed. His other dogs were still puppies, so he would have no guard dog for at least a year while he trained one of the little pups and waited for it to be fully grown. Setanta felt guilty about the dog who had just been doing what it was trained